I'm a sign language interpreter, and I have been for about 6 years. I started with special education a little bit before that. And today I want to talk about the Common Core state standards and how it relates to deaf education. If you really think it's a one-size-fits-all or not. If you go to the Common Core State Initiative website, you'll find the full definition of the Common Core state standards. Briefly, the Common Core state standards is supposed to establish a clear expectation for students across the entire United States. So the student in New York is getting the same education as the student in Washington. So when they finish high school, they'll have the same opportunities available to them because they have the same level of expertise. Now, I went online to YouTube and I found this video. It's DC Public Schools made it, and you can watch it on your own free time, but it was a great illustration of what the Common Core State Standards is. It gives you the illustration of walking upstairs, and each step is a new skill that they have to learn. And they're grouped into certain skills that they need to learn, and then they're given a platform, a longer step, that they're given time to master those skills and really solidify what they've learned, and then they move on to the next skill. So it's a wonderful video, so if you get the chance, I recommend watching it. It's awesome. Now there's the law in place for special education. The big one is the IDEA law, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It states that we are to ensure to provide a free and public education in the least restrictive environment. And that could look completely different for each individual student. And all of this is determined on the IEP, which is the Individual Education Plan. Every year there's a meeting between the teachers that work with the students, any support staff that work with the students, and the case manager for that student, which could be in a deaf situation, the teacher for the deaf. And they make that plan, and the parents. The parents are a crucial part of that plan. So everybody gets together, they decide on the plan for the year, and they work towards those goals. Now I want you to think of, imagine yourself as a deaf child. You're a freshman in high school, you don't know English, and you aren't very good at sign language. Your family don't sign, your family doesn't even know English. Now, you're put in this mainstream gen ed standards-based class. You're reading, let's say, the Odyssey. We did that recently. The Odyssey. That's even hard for native English speakers to understand, let alone somebody that doesn't even grasp a single language completely. You're told that you need to analyze the text. You need to evaluate characteristics of an epic, explain what an epithet is, and include cultural perspective. Now, you don't have language, so you've never heard the word culture. Now you have to figure out what's an epic, an epithet. Maybe I could show you some things, and you can get a little bit of that. And then you need to analyze epic similes, allusions, stuff like that. And then writing, you need to summarize using figurative language, all this, and you don't even have your own first language solidified yet. These are standards, so you would just probably fail. Is that fair? Now, you're that deaf student. You can't ask for help at home. Your family can't teach you basic skills. When I think of the skills attained by a hearing student and a deaf child, I think of a scale. So you have your scale. One side is the hearing side, and one side is the deaf side. The hearing child learns things from the moment they are born, just from hearing things. Knowing their mom's voice, knowing how to react when they're hungry, and then they can hear adults talking out of the room to know what's happening. They hear their peers ask questions and have have different discussions that would fill in a lot of blanks, but they don't get that information. So the hearing child from birth, their side of the scale is weighted down with all this information, and the hearing child needs to be formally taught. They need to be taught how to order a meal at a restaurant. They need to be able to use their interpreter, understand language enough to have a clear conversation with a doctor to explain what's wrong with them and to understand what's wrong with them when the doctor's talking to them. If we don't spend the time to develop that language skill for the deaf child, then they're not going to be able to do that when they grow into an adult. They need to be able to have skills for employment, college, relationship skills. They need to know how a man or a woman is supposed to treat them. They need to learn that, and it needs to be taught. Social awareness, there's a lot of cues that they miss because they can't hear their peers talking. And paying the bills. If they can't read and write, it's going to be really hard to pay the bills. They don't get a job to pay the bills. So when they get to high school, they have different options for the annual state standardized tests. These are heavily weighted tests and are very important for graduation. So it's not till high school that they have options. So the younger kids, they just have to take the state standardized test. Whether or not they know the standards or not, they still have to sit through hours of rigorous testing, knowing that they don't get it, they can't read it. So when they get to high school, there's different options. They can get a level 2 on the test. To meet the standards, you need a level 4. They can lower those standards and say, okay, we'll accept a level 2 from you, and we'll determine what that looks like. Then they can do off-grade level assessments, where instead of taking the freshman test, maybe we'll test her at the 3rd grade level, where she or he is reading at, so that way we can track their progress a little better. That doesn't happen very often though. And then locally determined assessments. The district itself can determine the appropriate assessments with the desired scores and everything else to meet graduation requirements. Now, if they use these options, they're going to graduate with an alternate achievement diploma. So they'll get a diploma of individual achievement rather than academic achievement. So it won't be a regular diploma. But if we're focused on them being able to succeed as adults, then a different diploma doesn't really make much of a difference. And you can get that off of the OSP website. So, tell me, does one size really fit all? Do you think it's appropriate to have a child who doesn't understand any of the subject matter in a classroom just to fulfill the requirements needed on paper? Does one size really fit all? Is it fair to teach all of the students at the same pace when there are so many different levels in special education? I would really love to hear different ideas of how you could teach these students all at the same level and use the Common Core. So, does one size really fit all? That's up to you to decide. Thank you. Oh, yes, references. There's my list of references that I used for this slide.